Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi.
So,
Hi.
Jenny, you're a teacher, but you're at COP as the National Education Union Executive Representative. I mean, what does that role, what does it really mean?
Okay, so here at COP, there's a whole delegation of trade union reps from all different working sectors from every continent around the world. So the UK has to have representatives as part of that. And this year at COP, there were two UK representatives from unions, and it happened to be that one of them is me from the National Education Union, which is great because it means we've got somebody looking into kind of education things that are going on as well as everything else. Because I'm kind of partly here for my role in education, but partly here for my role in defending people, whatever sector they work in, whether it's steel or coal or farming or whatever.
Yeah. So, how many days have you been there, Jenny? And what is it like in terms of the experience?
So I actually only arrived on last Wednesday because the UK delegation share the COP. So my fellow trade unionists did the first week and I'm doing the second week. And we had one day where we crossed over together, which is the what they call the rest day. But union reps don't have a rest. We all meet as reps to work out what we're doing for week two. So that was my first day here. And then my second 2 days here, which was yesterday and the day before. I was involved in the Greening Education Partnership meetings and workshops that were happening. So we had like a high level meeting with the Under Secretary of State for Education, Baroness Barron, was there at that meeting, and I got to speak at the meeting as well on behalf of teachers, which was great. And also handed the Baroness some artwork that had been done by year 5 and 6 children in a school in Leeds in the UK. And then we had a series of workshops looking at what the kind of world's plans are really for decarbonising education.
How, though, then, sort of on a personal level, what does it feel like being there, and what's the experience like?
Well, obviously, it's exciting because it's big and there's loads going on, and you just meet so many people from all over the world. It's also been great meeting teachers from all over the world. My sort of counterparts in Kenya and Canada and India, and hearing about all the things they're doing. So that's amazing. But there is also you get emotional when you hear really sad stories. I mean, yesterday we had a protest, which was all the kind of civil society organisations, all the kind of charities and sort of lobby groups and unions and Indigenous people and everything. And we had a protest, and we had some speakers there who had family that are caught up in the war in Gaza. And it was really heartbreaking to hear their stories. I mean, we were crying listening to them. And then the other thing is it can be very frustrating because you're kind of working very hard to sort of try and get the top government ministers to sort of agree things that need to happen to kind of protect people and look after people. And but you don't have a very strong voice unless you are one of those government ministers. You have a bit of a voice, but not enough. And it's very frustrating when you hear things coming out that suggest that they're not listening to the people that we think they should be listening to. Yeah, so it's a mixture of like hope, excitement, frustration, interest, loads of learning. I mean, wouldn't it be great if like a school party could come every year and children would get to see it? So, sorry, there's a noise because somebody's pushing a trolley past.
Oh, don't worry, don't worry.
Going to pause for a minute.
What has there been a real highlight then so far of anything that you've attended or participated in?
Do you know what one of the highlights was? I don't know if you're aware, and I can't show you it from here because I'm not sitting in the right part of the COP, but there's a huge dome in the middle of the site, and you can access the dome from the blue zone, which is where you're allowed in if you're a delegate or an observer. And you can also access it from the green zone, so where kind of anybody can go really. And the night before last at 7 o'clock, there was a film projected into this massive dome, and the film was completely run by children, and it was children from all over the world, and particularly from the global south, that were kind of speaking directly to ministers in this film, saying we don't want you to carry on just talking and writing stuff. We want you to actually deliver this time. And these children were all interviewed in their home setting where they were living. So we saw children, from all different countries all around the world. And it only lasted about 10 minutes, but it was a really powerful thing beamed out from the massive dome.
Yeah, it sounds like
that was a highlight, for sure.
Do you know if
Yeah.
that's going to be available online? Is it something that
I've got the link to it, so I can share that with you.
excellent? Well, we can share that then also with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, you I guess you've been involved in kind of with the trade union movement for a long time, but also been engaged with COPs as well, and kind of been involved in climate, kind of exploring climate change and responses to. But have you got wider reflections around COP as a process and kind of views on kind of how effective COP is?
Well, it's only my second COP, and I wasn't going to agree to go to the first one, and kind of got persuaded, and I definitely wasn't going to do a second one, and here I am, because I do have very mixed feelings about it. But I've always been one of those people that, while I can see that certain processes don't work, I think it's useful to still engage with them at the same time as kind of lobbying from the outside as well. If I sort of give you an example of what I mean, what we're doing here as trade unionists is we're pushing for certain agreements to go, certain bits of text and wording to go into the agreements, the final agreements that are made by ministers. So, for example, it will be things like that workers' rights are protected as we transition towards net zero, because that's the proper definition of a just transition. And we might or might not get those agreements in. Because we might not get those agreements in, we don't only, and I don't only, take time trying to persuade people that might not agree to get those texts into the agreements. The other thing that we need to be doing is building our union base, so making all of our members in schools aware that things will be coming down the line that might not be done in a just way and might not automatically protect them. And that's the reason we have unions. So the quote from our ITUC person who leads the delegation here, Bert, he always says, oh, when social dialogue fails, you have to take to the streets. And, that's one of the reasons that always on the middle day, not the middle day of COP, but one of the Saturdays, which is the Global Day of Action for the climate, and that was yesterday, there's always a big protest. And this is people doing the thing of taking it to the streets, because the ministers in their important buildings aren't listening. So we need to shout louder, and we need to take it upon ourselves and kind of mobilize our movement. So that's kind of going on at the same time. And when I've been in meetings where the people in charge aren't necessarily understanding or agreeing to what we want, I'm still talking individually to teachers and saying, what's happening in your union? Oh, you're not in a union. Oh, why not? And have you ever considered, so there's all sort of things going on at sort of multi levels at the same time. The reason I did agree to come back this year was because when I got back last year, I thought to myself, and lots of people asked me as well, do you feel it makes a difference you being there? And that's a different question from, does the COP make a difference to whether we keep to 1.5 degrees, etc. And I do feel that it made a difference, me being there, not necessarily to the final agreements that were made, but to kind of building the base that we have in education for taking meaningful action on climate change, being advocates for children in schools, especially the ones that don't have a voice, children from the early years sector, children with disabilities, people with eco-anxiety, all the rest of it. I do feel it makes a difference, because the amount of learning that takes place and the amount of connections that are made
Yeah. No, that sounds, and I was going to say thank you so much for attending, because I know it must be quite a big, a lot of effort to actually, travel out there and to be there in terms of the amount of energy it
Well,
takes.
before I did last year's COP, I'd actually given up flying, and I have given up flying apart from COP. I don't fly anywhere else.
Mhm.
I don't even like flying.
So just to wrap it up, Jenny, is there anything that you were really keen to maybe share, or anything particularly for teachers in the UK? Any message, from COP, anything that you think is
Definitely for
important?
teachers. If people can Google Greening Education Partnership, okay, this is a kind of partnership of um, various countries around the world, ministries of education with UNESCO. They have some draft green curriculum guidelines out, and they're asking for teachers to comment on those draft guidelines.
Mhm.
Lots of teachers that I've met here didn't feel that the guidelines were necessarily fully adequate for the sector they were working in or the context they were working in. And it will be really good to have a massive response to those guidelines from ordinary teachers. I can share those links with
Yeah.
you as well after, if that
Okay.
helps for you
Yeah,
to
that would be
send that
great.
out.
Well, thank you so
Thanks.
much. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview.
Thanks for asking me. Yeah,
Thank you.
lovely to see you all.
Have a good rest
Thanks.
of your time there, Jenny.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much, Jenny.
Thank you.